The dog walked into the store soaked and starving, but didn't touch a single bite of food. Instead, she stared at a freezer, guarding a secret that would uncover a buried nightmare. The morning air in Rosehill still smelled like rain when Mrs. Blake unlocked the doors to Thompson's market. The regulars were already lined up outside, chatting about weekend storms and whether the price of eggs would ever come down. The bell above the door jingled as old Mr. Harris walked in with his reusable bag and a familiar nod. Everything was normal, quiet, the way small towns liked it. Then the dog came. It happened fast. The automatic doors whooshed open and a blur of gold charged through, paws leaving muddy streaks across the clean tile. A scruffy golden retriever, ribs faintly visible beneath a dirt-matted coat, bolted past the bakery display, skidded around the canned goods aisle, and crashed into a fruit stand with a loud clatter. Apples rolled across the floor like marbles. A toddler squealed with laughter while her mother pulled her back in alarm. The dog didn't care. She wasn't there for food. Her sides heaved like she'd been running for miles, her coat soaked from the wet grass outside. She made it to the freezer aisle and stopped, stiff and alert, standing guard between rows of ice cream and frozen vegetables. Her tail didn't wag, her eyes didn't blink. She let out a single low growl when Mr. Harris tried to step past her for his usual frozen peas. "Hey now," he muttered, hands up, backing away. "She's not playing." Mrs. Blake grabbed her phone from behind the register, dialing animal control with shaky fingers. "I don't know what's wrong," she told the dispatcher. "She's not attacking anyone, but she won't leave. It's like she's trying to tell us something." The dog paced in front of the freezers, then circled the tile near a floor vent. She scratched at it once, then again, then lay down right there, ears perked toward the ceiling, like she was listening for something no one else could hear. Every time someone tried to move toward her, she'd growl. A low, steady warning. Not hateful, not scared. Just firm, protective. Customers began pulling out their phones. Videos were already popping up on local social media feeds. "Lost dog refuses to leave grocery store," one caption read. Another showed her staring at a little girl with frozen corn in her hand. The girl smiled. The dog didn't move. After an hour of failed coaxing with treats, water, and kind words, the store called the sheriff. By the time Dana Calloway arrived in her uniform, the golden retriever was still lying there, right in front of the freezer section, head on her paws, eyes watching every movement like a sentry. Dana crouched a few feet away, one hand resting on her knee. "You lost, girl?" she said softly. The dog lifted her head, ears twitching. Then she stood, body tense, and turned slowly toward the back exit. She looked over her shoulder, directly at Dana, as if asking her to follow, and for some reason, Dana did. The dog didn't care about the peanut butter biscuit the cashier offered, or the bowl of water placed just inches from her nose. She sniffed it once, then turned away, her eyes scanning the room like she was waiting for something, or someone. Mrs. Blake called the local vet, hoping maybe a familiar scent or voice would help, but even Dr. Keene, with her soft voice and gentle hands, couldn't get close. Every time someone came near, the golden retriever would rise slowly, hackles low, body tight with tension, and let out a warning bark that froze them in place. She wasn't scared. She wasn't wild. But she wasn't letting anyone close either. Outside, more townsfolk gathered. Word had spread quickly through Rosehill, and now a small crowd watched through the market's front windows, murmuring among themselves. Kids pointed and asked if they could pet her. Parents pulled them back gently, shaking their heads. Inside the store, the air felt thick. No one could explain it, but everyone sensed the same thing. This dog wasn't just lost or hungry. She was trying to say something. She paced again, circling the vent in front of the freezer aisle. Her nails clicked against the linoleum as she scratched at the tile, not frantic, but purposeful. She barked twice, loud and sharp, and then lay down again, panting. Mrs. Blake, still holding the phone, sighed. "This is more than I can handle," she muttered. "We need help." Sheriff Dana Calloway was halfway through her morning coffee when the call came in. She wasn't expecting anything more dramatic than a parking ticket or a lost wallet. But something in Mrs. Blake's voice made her pause. "She won't leave," the store owner said, her voice low and uneasy. "It's like she's guarding something. Or waiting." When Dana pulled up to Thompson's Market, she wasn't sure what to expect. She stepped out of her cruiser and adjusted her hat, nodding to the small crowd outside. A few people were already filming. She stepped into the store, her boots echoing softly on the tile. The scent of apples and freezer coolant lingered in the air, and there she was. The golden retriever sat upright now, right where the freezer aisle began, her head turned toward the sound of Dana's footsteps. Their eyes met, amber and green, and something passed between them. Not recognition exactly, but something close. Dana lowered herself into a crouch, one hand resting loosely on her knee. "Hey, girl," she said, keeping her voice calm. "You've made quite the scene." The dog didn't move. She watched, tail still, ears alert. "I'm not here to scare you," Dana continued, "but I need to understand what you're doing here." There was a long moment of silence. Then, slowly, the dog stood. She didn't bark or growl. Instead, she turned away, trotted down the aisle, past the butcher's counter, and slipped through the swinging door into the storeroom. "Wait!" one of the employees called out. But Dana was already moving, following the soft echo of paws on concrete. She caught a glimpse of the golden tail disappearing through the back exit, the door creaking shut behind it. Dana pushed through, stepping into the overgrown alley behind the store. The dog was waiting at the edge of the lot, head turned back, eyes fixed on her. Then, without a sound, she bolted into the woods beyond the fence. Dana didn't hesitate. She followed. Dana hadn't planned on running that morning, but the second the golden retriever disappeared into the woods behind Thompson's Market, her instincts kicked in. She pushed past the overgrown brush, one hand on her radio, the other brushing low-hanging branches from her face. The dog wasn't sprinting. Not exactly. She moved with purpose. Fast, but not out of reach. Pausing just long enough at forks in the trail to look back. Ears perked, tail still. She wasn't running away. She was leading. "Where are you going, girl?" Dana muttered between breaths, ducking under a leaning tree limb. Her boots slipped on damp leaves, but she kept her balance. The sounds of town faded behind them, the hum of traffic, the buzz of conversation. Even the birds seemed quieter out here. All that was left was the rhythmic thump of her boots and the occasional snap of twigs under the dog's paws. They crossed a shallow creek, the dog leaping from stone to stone like she'd done it 100 times. Dana waded through, water soaking into her socks. She didn't care. Her eyes stayed on the dog. Something about the way she moved, the way she kept checking to make sure Dana was still behind her, made it clear. This wasn't about escape. It was about urgency. About help. Half a mile in, the trail narrowed. Weeds clawed at Dana's pants, briars tugging at the fabric. She pushed on. Her heart pounded, both from exertion and from something deeper. A feeling building in her chest, like a warning. She'd followed plenty of tracks in her career. Runaways, missing persons, wounded animals. But this was different. The dog had chosen her. That thought stuck with her. Another sharp turn, and the trees opened slightly into a thinned-out patch of woods. The golden retriever paused, her chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. She turned to Dana one last time and gave a short, soft bark, then trotted ahead toward something in the distance. Dana followed, eyes narrowing, as she stepped into a clearing half hidden by overgrowth. There, tucked between leaning trees and wrapped in vines and moss, stood a hunting cabin. The windows were boarded up, the roof sagged with age, and ivy clawed up the wooden walls. It looked forgotten, like no one had touched it in years. But Dana saw the signs, fresh footprints in the mud. A cigarette butt still smoldering near the porch. The faint shimmer of a metal latch that didn't belong to the original woodwork. The dog stood at the bottom of the steps, tail stiff, head lowered. She let out a low growl. Not a warning, but something more primal, more haunted. Dana reached for the radio on her shoulder. "This is Sheriff Calloway. I'm going to need backup," she said, her voice low, calm. "I've got a location just outside of town. Possible break in the McLean case." She stepped slowly onto the porch, the old wood groaning under her weight. The golden retriever didn't move. She just watched, eyes sharp, as Dana reached for the cabin door. The handle turned, and the stench that hit Dana's nose froze her in place. Something was very wrong inside. The golden retriever let out a sharp bark that echoed through the stillness, then began scratching at the old cabin door with both front paws, her nails dragging down the weathered wood. She whimpered once, looked back at Dana, then barked again, louder this time, more desperate. The porch groaned beneath Dana's boots as she stepped closer, hand resting on the doorframe, eyes fixed on the handle. The dog paced, circled back, then shoved her shoulder against the door like she could knock it down herself. That's when Dana caught the scent. It was faint at first, like wet wood left too long in the sun. Then it hit harder, thick and sour, curling into her nose and making her stomach turn. It smelled like rot, like something gone wrong. Not just old furniture or mildew, this was deeper, uglier. Dana reached for her flashlight, flicked it on, and slowly turned the knob. The door creaked open with a long moan, hinges resisting after years of disuse. The golden retriever didn't wait. She darted past Dana and into the darkness beyond. The interior of the cabin was choked with dust and silence. Cobwebs clung to the corners. The air was damp and heavy, and every step stirred up the scent of mold and something worse, something that made Dana's skin crawl. Her flashlight beam cut through the gloom, sliding across overturned chairs and a long-forgotten coat rack. On the wall, a family photo had slipped from its nail. The frame cracked, the faces in the picture faded by time. "Easy now," Dana whispered, moving carefully across the warped wooden floor. The dog was in the center of the room now, circling a threadbare rug. She barked once, sharp and clear, then began scratching again, her paws ripping at the fabric like she knew exactly what was beneath. Dana moved closer, crouched beside her, and pulled the rug back with one smooth motion. Beneath it, the wood planks were interrupted by a square outline and a rusted iron ring, a trapdoor. Her breath caught. The dog whined and looked at her, tail lowered, eyes pleading. Dana leaned down and grabbed the handle. It resisted at first, the metal stiff from rust, but then it gave way with a pop and a groan. She lifted the trapdoor slowly, careful not to let it slam. The smell hit her full force now. Damp earth, rotted wood, and something else. Sweat, old blood, and decay. She raised the flashlight and aimed it into the darkness below. A narrow wooden staircase led down into a cellar. The air felt colder, like the earth itself was holding its breath. She stepped down one creaking stair, then another, the beam of light shaking slightly in her hand. The cellar was cramped, its ceiling low, walls built of cracked concrete and stone. A rusted table stood against the far wall, covered in ropes, tape, and empty water bottles. But it was what stood in the center of the room that made her freeze. 6 cages, metal, dented, stained. One of them wasn't empty. A girl, no older than 10, sat huddled in the corner of the cage, her arms wrapped tight around her knees, her hair tangled and matted with dirt. She blinked at the light, eyes wide, lips cracked. Dana dropped to her knees. "Oh my God," she whispered. The golden retriever moved beside her, nose pressed against the cage bars, tail wagging slowly. The girl looked up, eyes locking on the dog. Her voice cracked as she whispered one word. "Sasha." The wooden trapdoor hung open behind her, like the mouth of something ancient, something that had kept its secrets buried too long. Dana's boots thudded softly on the narrow stairs as she descended, flashlight in one hand, her other pressed against the damp wall for balance. The golden retriever followed close behind, stepping carefully, as if she knew exactly where to place her paws. The air thickened as they moved deeper. It was colder down here, the kind of cold that clung to your skin and settled in your bones. The flashlight beam shook slightly in Dana's hand as it passed over the walls, stone and wood, patched with concrete, all slick with moisture. And then the light landed on the cages. There were 6 in total, arranged in 2 rows of 3, each one made of welded iron bars, the kind you'd see in a roadside zoo or an illegal kennel. Most were empty, doors hanging open or chains trailing across the floor. But the second one on the left still held something, or rather, someone. Dana's breath caught in her throat. A girl, no older than 10, was curled up in the back corner. She looked more like a shadow than a child at first, her skin pale beneath layers of grime, her clothes little more than rags. Her bare feet were cut and bruised, and her hair hung in tangled knots across her face. When the light touched her, she flinched, raising an arm to shield her eyes, the movement so small and slow it nearly broke Dana's heart. The golden retriever let out a soft whine and stepped forward, sniffing through the cage bars. Her tail wagged just once, then stilled, her body low and quiet. She pressed her nose gently against the cold metal. The girl stirred again, slowly lowering her arm. She blinked at the dog, eyes wide and shining. Then her lips parted, dry and cracked, and she whispered a single word. "Sasha?" Dana lowered her flashlight, careful not to blind her. Her voice was soft. "Is that her name?" The girl gave the smallest nod. Her eyes locked on the dog. Dana knelt beside the cage, pulling out a set of keys she'd found on a nail upstairs. Her hands trembled as she tried each one, heart pounding louder with every second. On the 4th try, the lock clicked open. The door creaked as she pulled it wide. The golden retriever moved first, slipping into the cage and pressing her body gently against the girl's side. The child clung to her immediately, burying her face in the dog's neck, her thin arms wrapping tight around the fur. Sasha didn't move, didn't bark. She just stood there, solid and calm, her tail twitching with the slightest movement, as if to say, "I found you. You're safe now." Dana reached forward carefully. "It's okay," she said. "I'm here to help. What's your name?" The girl's voice was barely a whisper. "Abby, Abby," Dana repeated softly. "You're going to be all right." But as she looked around the cellar, the empty cages, the chains, the dark stains on the floor, Dana knew this was just the beginning. Sasha had brought her to something terrible. And maybe, just maybe, something bigger than anyone had realized. The ambulance lights painted the trees red and blue as they flashed across the edge of the woods. Paramedics moved quickly, lifting the girl's small, fragile body onto the stretcher with practiced hands. She didn't fight. She didn't cry. She just stared at the sky as if trying to convince herself it was real. Dana walked beside them, her flashlight still clipped to her vest, her mind spinning in 100 directions. The golden retriever never left the girl's side, her fur now streaked with dirt and something darker. She limped slightly from a cut on her paw, but she didn't slow down. The paramedics laid the girl in the back of the ambulance and started to close the doors when she stirred for the first time. Her hand reached out weakly, fingers brushing the air. The dog immediately stepped forward. "She stays," Dana said quickly. "Let her ride with her." The paramedic hesitated for only a moment before nodding. The golden retriever jumped in and curled up at the girl's feet. The door shut behind them and the ambulance sped off toward Rose Hill Medical. Dana stood in the clearing, the smell of mold and rot still clinging to her clothes, and radioed for a full team. They would need search units, crime scene techs, child services, but more than anything, they needed answers. By the time Dana arrived at the hospital, the little girl had already been admitted. Nurses moved around her room in soft silence, checking vitals, hooking up IVs, speaking in quiet tones as if afraid to wake her. But she wasn't sleeping. She was just still, watching the ceiling like she was somewhere else entirely. Dana stepped into the room slowly, The dog was lying at the foot of the bed, chin resting on her paws, eyes flicking toward the door when Dana entered. The tail gave one small wag, but she didn't move. A nurse approached with a clipboard. "She hasn't said much," she whispered. "No parents yet, but we're trying to match her through missing persons reports. Malnourished, dehydrated, a few healed-over injuries. But she's stable." "There first," Dana nodded, her eyes drifting back to the girl. She stepped closer, careful not to startle her. "Hey there," she said gently. "My name's Dana. I'm with the sheriff's department. Do you know your name?" The girl blinked slowly, her lips cracked and dry. Her voice, when it came, was barely more than a breath. "Abby." Dana felt something in her chest tighten. "Abby McLean?" Another blink. A small nod. Dana swallowed hard. Abby McLean had been missing for 19 days. Posters with her face still hung in the post office and grocery store windows. The town had feared the worst. "That's your dog, isn't it?" Dana asked, nodding toward the retriever. Abby's eyes shifted slowly. She looked at the dog for the first time since arriving. Her lip trembled. Her hand moved toward the fur. "Sasha," she whispered. The dog stood, tail swaying gently, and climbed carefully onto the bed. She curled beside Abby, her body warm and steady. The girl pressed her face into the dog's neck and began to cry, silent, shaking sobs that broke the heavy stillness of the room. Dana stepped back, letting the moment belong to them. She didn't know what Sasha had been through to get here, but one thing was clear. She hadn't just found the girl. She had never stopped looking. The next morning, a soft rain fell over Rose Hill, turning the hospital windows into sheets of blurry gray. Abby was still asleep, curled into Sasha's side, her small hand gripping the dog's fur like it was the only real thing left in the world. Nurses came and went with hushed steps, checking vitals, changing IV bags, but they didn't try to move Sasha. No one had the heart. Dana stood just outside the room, arms crossed, staring through the glass. Her phone buzzed with calls from the state police, the FBI, and reporters already catching wind of the story. She didn't answer. Not yet. The search team had swept the old cabin through the night. They cataloged everything. Those rusted cages, the ropes, the bloodstains, the mold on the walls. But the people who had put Abby there were long gone. The cabin had been abandoned in a hurry. Someone had known they were coming. Dana walked down to the station, her thoughts tangled. In her office sat a folder thick with missing persons reports, some going back years. None had ever led to anything. Now they had a face, a name, a place, and a dog who had somehow outrun monsters and come back with a trail. She called Dr. Keene, the town's veterinarian, who had been asked to examine Sasha after the hospital allowed it. "Injured but stable," the vet said. "She's got cuts on her legs, infected pads, ticks, malnutrition, but nothing life-threatening. She's strong, real strong." "Could she have traveled far like that?" Dana asked. Dr. Keene paused. "With the right reason? Yeah. That dog had a mission. She wasn't running. She was searching." Dana hung up and leaned back in her chair, staring at the map pinned to her wall. The cabin sat 12 miles from town. Deep woods, no roads, no power, forgotten even by old hunters. How had Sasha found her way back to civilization? Then it clicked. Thompson's market. It had been Abby's favorite place. Dana remembered hearing it from her parents during those early panicked interviews. Abby loved going grocery shopping with her mom. She always asked for Sasha to come along, said the dog liked the cold floors and the smells from the bakery. It made sense now. Sasha hadn't run to the store looking for food or shelter. She'd run to the last place she remembered Abby being happy, the one place that smelled like safety. She had gone where she hoped someone would listen. And someone had. Later that day, when Abby finally woke up again, she whispered through cracked lips, "They took Sasha first. They said she was just a dog, but I think they were scared of her." Dana leaned in gently. "What happened, Abby? How did Sasha get away?" "She bit one of them," Abby said. "When he tried to grab me, He hit her with something, but she got away. I didn't think I'd see her again." Dana didn't say anything. She just reached out and placed a hand on Abby's arm. "You saw her again," she said softly. "She never stopped looking for you." But the cabin was empty now. Whoever had taken Abby, and likely others, had slipped away. All that was left were their footprints in the mud and the stories Sasha couldn't tell. But she had brought someone back, and that was where they would start. The cabin sat quiet under the early morning mist, its roof sagging like tired shoulders, boards groaning in the breeze. But it wasn't forgotten anymore. Yellow tape flapped around the trees like warning flags. Crime scene vans lined the old dirt path, their back doors open, agents moving in and out with cameras, notebooks, and gloves. Dana stood by the porch, arms folded, watching as the CSI teams entered and exited, some shaking their heads, others whispering to one another with grim faces. They had been there all night, but the cellar still felt like it held its breath. The smell hadn't faded, rot, damp wood, something sharp and metallic that hung in the air like a threat. Inside the trapdoor room, evidence was everywhere. Bloodstains dried into the floorboards, dark and cracked. Ropes frayed from too many uses. Scratches along the cage doors that made Dana's stomach twist. A camera, tucked high in the corner, behind old piping, pointed down at the cages. Its memory card was already in the hands of a technician, but it was the map that made the room fall silent. Pinned to the wall, beside a shelf of canned food and bottles of water, was a large unfolded map. The counties around Rosehill were marked with red circles. In some towns, just 1 or 2 pins. In others, 5 or 6. A few were pressed in so hard they had torn the paper. "What is this?" one of the agents muttered, snapping a photo. Dana stepped closer. One of the pins was marked with a strip of masking tape labeled August 7th. That was the day Abby disappeared. Another was marked July 12th. "Are these planned targets?" she asked. "Or records of what they've already done?" No one answered. Back at the station, surveillance footage confirmed what Dana already feared. A white van had been parked near the cabin hours before Sasha led her there. The timestamp showed it leaving just before dawn. No plates, no clear view of the driver. But it was something. She took the footage to the hospital that afternoon, needing to show Abby, but unsure how much the girl could handle. Abby sat up in bed now, a little stronger. Sasha curled beside her with a soft blanket tucked under one paw. Dana sat on the edge of the bed. "Abby," she said gently, "can I ask you something important?" The girl nodded, fingers still laced in Sasha's fur. "Were there other children?" Abby's eyes dropped. Her shoulders tensed. "Yes," she whispered. 4. 2 boys, 2 girls. One of the boys was younger than me. They didn't keep us all in the same place. They said I was being moved next." Dana felt a chill run down her spine. "Do you remember where they were taking you?" Abby shook her head. "But they talked about a red barn, with numbers on the roof. One said it was safe for drop-offs. I don't know what that means." Dana stood slowly, her heart pounding with quiet rage. They were still out there, and somewhere, other children were waiting for help that hadn't come yet. But it would, because Sasha had found the first clue, and they weren't going to stop now. The sky was heavy with clouds as the team gathered near the edge of a narrow back road, far beyond the town limits. Dana stood beside a handler from the state's canine unit, a man named Lewis, who crouched next to Sasha, gently slipping on a fresh harness. The golden retriever stood still, tail low but steady, her eyes focused, ears twitching with every word. She wasn't just alert, she was ready. They had started that morning at the cabin, letting Sasha sniff one of the blankets left behind in the cellar, one that hadn't belonged to Abby. It held a different scent, one that made Sasha pace in circles, whine once, then turn toward the trees. Lewis had nodded to Dana and said simply, "She's got something." Now, after hours of following dirt roads and wooded trails, Sasha stopped at a metal gate overgrown with vines. Beyond it, half hidden in the shadows of tall pine trees, sat a barn with peeling red paint and a rusted tin roof. The numbers 17-4 were spray-painted in black, across the side, crooked and fading but still visible. Sasha barked once, low and urgent, then pushed through the gate. The barn groaned under the wind, its door hanging loose on one side. Inside, the air was stale, thick with dust, and something bitter. Dana's flashlight swept across the floor, dirt packed hard from boots and tires, scuff marks leading in and out. A table sat against one wall with empty soda cans and cigarette butts scattered across it. But it was the far wall that stopped everyone cold. Dozens of items were tacked up like trophies. Children's clothes, worn and stained. A tiny yellow raincoat, a pair of pink shoes, a Spider-Man backpack with one strap torn. Each item hung on a nail, lined up with care. Too neat for coincidence. Dana's stomach turned. She didn't need a memo or briefing to understand. This wasn't just a place people passed through. This was part of something organized, something cruel. Lewis stepped beside her, lowering his voice. She led us here. No hesitation. She knew exactly where to go. Sasha was circling again, nose pressed to the ground, tail rigid. She sniffed the floor, the corners, then stopped at a hatch in the far corner of the barn. She barked twice, pawing at the edge. Dana moved quickly, lifting the panel to reveal a small storage pit beneath. Inside were duffel bags, 4 of them, each filled with clothes, snacks, bottles of water, and flashlights. Supplies for moving children. Dana swallowed hard. This isn't just one place, she said quietly. This is a system. One of the agents climbed into the pit, opening one of the bags. Inside was a notepad with dates and initials. A ledger of some kind. Dana stared at the scribbled markings, her heart pounding. Abby had been right. There were more kids, and this was where they were being moved, processed, hidden, discarded. Sasha climbed the barn steps, turning one last circle near the center of the floor. She sat, watching the humans in silence, as if waiting for them to catch up. She had found them the next clue. Now it was their turn to act. The barn discovery hit the town like a storm that wouldn't pass. Rose Hill wasn't the same anymore. People looked at each other differently, in the grocery store, in church, at the gas station. Parents clutched their children tighter. Strangers felt less like neighbors. Dana barely slept. Her desk at the station was buried under files, maps, and reports. But her mind kept circling one detail over and over. How did they know where Abby lived? How did they know when to take her? When Sasha would be outside, and Jack McLean wouldn't be home. It had felt too planned, too clean. Then the call came in. An officer down in Maple Hollow, a neighboring town, reported something strange. A witness said they had seen Sasha near a small white house 3 days before she ran into Thompson's market. The house belonged to a man named Eric Danner, a county social worker. On paper, he looked like any other civil servant. Clean record, modest home, volunteered at youth centers. But Dana's gut twisted when she pulled his name from the system. Eric had handled the McLean file. He'd been the one to call and check in on Abby after her mother died the year before. He had access to every report, every vulnerability, every schedule. Dana stared at his file, her jaw tightening. He knew where to look, she whispered. An emergency meeting was held at the precinct. FBI agents who had joined the case nodded grimly as the evidence was laid out. Sasha's unexpected appearance near Danner's property, a pattern of phone calls tied to burner numbers, traced back to areas marked on the barn map. And something colder, Eric had once been seen talking to a man in a white van, the same one caught on surveillance leaving the cabin. They set a trap. An agent posed as a desperate father, offering money for relocation assistance with a troubled foster child. The meeting was arranged at a highway diner just outside county lines. Hidden cameras were placed in the booths, wires set, agents in parked cars nearby. Eric showed up with a smile. Clean shirt, pressed slacks, a laptop bag over his shoulder. He ordered coffee, leaned back in his seat, and talked like someone used to getting what he wanted. When the agent asked if there were other children available, He didn't even flinch. "There are ways," Eric said, sipping from his mug. "Some kids don't have anyone watching. Some are practically waiting to disappear." That was enough. Within seconds, the place lit up with flashing lights and shouts. He didn't resist. He just froze, eyes wide, lips parting in quiet shock as agents surrounded him. At the station, under bright lights and cold stares, he cracked. He admitted to passing along information, names, addresses, when parents worked night shifts, when kids walked to school alone. He never did the taking, he claimed. He never laid a hand on them. He just opened the door. Dana watched him through the glass, rage and sadness tightening in her chest. He didn't see himself as part of the ring, just someone helping the machine run a little smoother. But there were gaps in his story. Names he refused to give. People he swore he didn't know. He confessed, but not everything. Some doors were still closed. And Sasha, quiet as ever, waited by the squad room door, her eyes fixed on the man in the interview room like she knew he hadn't told it all. Not yet. The night was heavy with fog. As the convoy of cruisers and unmarked cars rolled through the gates of the old trucking depot on the edge of town. The headlights cut through the mist, slicing across rows of rusted containers stacked like forgotten cargo. The place had been shut down for years, its buildings boarded up, fences sagging, and weeds growing through cracks in the pavement. But tonight, something felt different. Sasha sat in the passenger seat of Dana's SUV, her ears alert, body tense. She had led them here, again. After Eric Danner's arrest, a tech team dug through his devices and found a half-deleted email with a code and a location. It matched one of the pins on the barn map, a place marked only with the word transfer. When they pulled up to the row of containers marked in the satellite photos, Sasha's body went stiff. She jumped out before Dana had the door fully open, nose to the ground, tail low and sweeping in fast motions. She sniffed the grass, then the gravel, and then the bottom edge of the first container on the left. She barked once, a sharp sound that made every officer freeze. "Hold positions," Dana called, raising her flashlight. "Let her work." Sasha paced the length of the container, then stopped near the far corner, where a small gap had formed between the ground and the steel frame. She lowered herself, pressing her nose to the gap, sniffing hard. A moment later, she let out a whine and began clawing. Her paws scraped metal and dirt, leaving streaks of blood from torn pads. But she didn't stop. Dana knelt beside her, pressing her ear close to the container wall. Then she heard it. A soft sound. A voice. "Hello?" Dana's heart slammed against her chest. She stood and yelled, "We've got someone inside!" Officers rushed forward. A crowbar was jammed into the door's lock. It groaned and popped. The doors creaked open slowly, hinges screeching like something out of a nightmare. Flashlights flooded the inside, and there they were, 5 children, all huddled in the corner, blinking at the light, too stunned to cry. One boy clutched a stuffed bear with a torn ear. A girl with curly hair trembled but didn't look away. Another child stepped forward, her arms covered in bruises, and whispered, "Are you the police?" Dana's voice cracked. "Yes, sweetheart. You're safe now." Paramedics pushed in gently, wrapping blankets around small shoulders and checking pulses. One child fainted into a medic's arms. Another just curled up on the floor and sobbed. Sasha didn't bark. She didn't move from the corner where she'd clawed her way through blood and dirt. But when one of the boys saw her, he let go of the medic's hand and crawled to her on all fours. He wrapped his arms around her neck and said, "You found us." Sasha's tail thumped against the ground, slow and steady, because she had. Again. Spring came slow to Rose Hill that year, as if the town needed extra time to thaw from the cold it had carried too long. But when the sun finally pushed through the gray, it brought more than just warmth. It brought something lighter. Laughter returned to places where silence had lingered. Flowers bloomed again, where caution tape once fluttered in the breeze. And in one quiet backyard, tucked behind a white picket fence, a girl and her dog played in the grass like nothing had ever gone wrong. Abby's laugh carried across the yard, clear and bright, as she ran barefoot through the soft clover. Her hair was longer now, her cheeks fuller, her steps no longer timid. She spun in circles with a bubble wand, chasing tiny spheres as they drifted upward. Sasha followed at her side, slower now but still alert, her eyes never far from the girl she had rescued. Dana sat on the porch steps, coffee mug in hand, watching them. It had taken time, weeks of therapy, careful conversations, and slow mornings with no questions asked. But Abby had found her way back. She smiled now. She spoke freely. Sometimes she even sang. Sasha had been the constant. Through every night Abby woke screaming. Through every thunderstorm that shook the windows, through every checkup and courtroom visit, the golden retriever never left her side. Dana had filed the adoption papers herself. It was only right. Sasha wasn't just a dog anymore. She was family. Thompson's Market had installed a plaque on the wall outside, just beside the freezer aisle. People stopped and read it every day. To the dog who wouldn't leave, because she wouldn't let them stay lost. Underneath was a photo of Sasha, taken the week she'd been released from the animal hospital, her eyes bright and nose pressed gently to Abby's cheek. People left flowers there sometimes. One child left a drawing of a superhero in a red cape with a dog by his side. Someone taped a note beside it that said, "Thank you for finding her." Dana reached down and rubbed Sasha's ears. The dog looked up, tail wagging, before turning her attention back to Abby. "She's always watching me," Abby said one evening, as they sat on a blanket under the tree. "She always will," Dana replied. "Even when I'm sleeping? Especially then." Sasha stretched out beside them, her head resting on Abby's knee. The scars on her paws had faded, though a few would never fully disappear. Her body was older now, slower, but her heart hadn't changed. When Abby walked to school each morning, Sasha waited by the door. When Abby read books aloud in the backyard, Sasha lay beside her, eyes closed, ears twitching. One night, as stars began to pierce the sky and the porch light clicked on behind them, Abby curled into Dana's side and whispered, "Do you think she remembers it all?" Dana looked at Sasha, who was still awake, still listening. "I think she remembers every second," she said softly. "But not because it hurt, because you were worth finding." And Sasha, as if hearing every word, let out a gentle breath and laid her head back down, keeping watch over her girl, like she always had, never far, never forgetting. Thank you for watching this video of a dog's devotion. If you like this story, show your support with a like, and join us by subscribing for more inspiring stories like this one.